Now that we have an idea of what version control is, we can talk about Git. As you can imagine, Git is a version control system. That is, Git is an implementation of what we saw in the previous video. Specifically, Git is a distributed version control system that is used to track changes in the source code of software projects. This means that we can provide a typical version control tracking of the different files that make up an application. Git works with all types of applications: desktop, mobile, web, etc. This is because what Git does is track changes that occur in the source code, remembering that, at the end of the day, source code is simply text. Whether it is C#, JavaScript, Python, or whatever, in the end, it is simply text. One of the fundamental characteristics of Git is that it is distributed. This refers to the fact that each person has a complete copy of the code on their machine, independently. But it is not just a copy of the code, but the copy of the history of changes. This is different from what we saw with the Google Docs example, where the change history was on Google servers. In the case of Git, I can have the change history on my computer, and you can have the change history on your computer. So we can work independently, and in the end, we can consolidate our work. This has important consequences. First, this makes Git fast. Of course, if you think about it, since you have a local copy of the change history, this means that you can make modifications to that history, for example, adding new changes on your machine, without having to connect to a central server. Another consequence is that if, for some reason, someone accidentally introduces errors into the code on the central server, this does not have to affect your local repository. So even if the code on the central server has errors, this does not have to interrupt your work. We will talk more about what a repository is in the future. For now, we can continue. One interesting feature of Git is that we can use branches. Branches are a mechanism to make an independent copy of the source code of your application. This way, you can work on this independent copy without affecting the original code. And only when you finish working, you will merge the created branch with the original code. This seems like something simple, but it is essential for you to be a person who develops software professionally. I will show you an example of why this is so important later. For now, let's continue exploring other features. As we have mentioned, but it is worth emphasizing, with Git we can do collaborative work, where several people can develop software at the same time, each one working with a local copy of the code on their machine, and periodically pushing the changes to a central server to verify that your code and that of the people you work with all work well together. Finally, Git is free to use. You do not have to pay licenses or anything like that to install Git on your machine today.